My dad brought me here at the age of 7. My mom stayed back home in Jamaica, so it was just me and him. He was very strict. It was cultural, mostly. He had served in the military back home, so he controlled all areas of my life. School, sports, socializing. Nothing was ever enough for him. Not the first place medals, not the honor roll, nothing. He tried hard to break me down. He'd make me wake up at 3 a.m. to go jogging. He'd make me kneel on the floor all night. And he would never let me speak back. He intimidated me into silence. I left the house when I turned 18. I got a job as a pharmacy tech, and I got my own apartment, but I still lived nearby. One day I was driving to work, and I saw him walking to the bus stop. So I pulled over and picked him up. The ride was only 10 minutes, but there was a different energy this time. He actually talked to me, and he let me talk back. He told me things about his life, and he talked about how stressed he felt. Things got better after that day. I would occasionally drop by the house. I introduced him to my girlfriend. He would make jokes and laugh. We were finally able to form a relationship. On the morning he died, I actually drove past the crime scene without realizing it. My phone had been turned off because it's not allowed at work, but when I finally turned it on, I realized I had several missed calls from him. Each time he left a voicemail saying, "Alex, pick up. Alex, I need a ride. Alex, please come get me." The only time he didn't leave a voicemail was the very last call. He'd been shot in the neck while walking to the bus stop. I always wonder if that last call was while he was bleeding out. The next few months were surreal. I ended up quitting my job, and I went to a recruiter's office. And I punished myself the same way he would have done it. I joined the Marines.
It wasn't a secret. The first day we met, I told her that I was bisexual and that I'd been with men and women my entire life. At the time, she shrugged it off, and it wasn't an issue for the first 10 years of our marriage. The relationship was perfectly loving and stable. But then, I don't know, something happened. It wasn't a particular man. I never cheated on her. It was something abstract. I just missed relationships with men. So I told her. I was honest. But when I uttered that thing, it was like a bomb had gone off. She turned away her face like she'd been slapped very hard. It caused her so much pain. She lost a lot of weight. We cried and cried and cried about it. For 3 years we cried. We'd meet in front of Starbucks every day and cry in front of everybody. We didn't live together after that. And we were never sexual again. But we were still intimate. We still took a lot of naps together. I always held her. We'd go shopping and walk arm in arm. She even kept my last name and called me her gay husband. Her health began to deteriorate in 2007. It was a nerve disease. She lost her hearing, then she lost her sight, and I took care of her. She used to always tell me to just forget about her, to go out there and find a good guy. But I stayed by her side. We'd never officially gotten divorced, which helped in the end. they let me into the hospital room as her husband. I wasn't allowed to touch her, but I was right next to her, breathing with her as she died. It's been 2 years now. I'll be moving away soon. There's nothing left in the city for me. But first I'm going to hold a ceremony in Central Park and give an envelope of her ashes to everyone who loved her. I don't know whether or not to call her my wife, but none of that's important to me. Alexandra was the love of my life.
My therapist told me the news was causing my depression, so I managed to completely avoid it for the past 5 years. I used to consume articles for 4 hours every day. I'd read the New York Times front to back, except the sports section. But then the Times caused the war in Iraq, so I switched over to the leftist websites. I thought it was my obligation as a responsible citizen to pay attention to bad news. I thought maybe if I learned enough, then I could help organize something. But then it all just sent me into utter despair. And I began to look at people as brainwashed. I'd see people having kids and I'd get angry. I mean, don't they realize how uninhabitable the planet is going to be? And people think if we make a few changes, we'll be fine. But we won't be fine, because the problem is systemic, and there's no movement capable of ending capitalism in time to save the planet. But anyway, I'm not trying to stress over this stuff anymore.
Accept me. What's love about?
Mom died suddenly of a heart attack. One day she came home early because she was feeling tired, and then she just slumped over. My father was with her at the time. He tried to resuscitate her, with all the trauma that entailed. I'm sure it was tough on him, but he'd never been an outwardly emotional man. I mean, I'd never seen him cry. There was a bunch of people at our house after the funeral, and Dad kept excusing himself. I'd follow him back to his bedroom, and we'd lie in his bed together and talk. It was the most open and honest I'd ever seen him. He told me he was feeling lost and inadequate. See, Mom had always been the outward face of the relationship, the talker and the feeler. She'd host the parties while he stayed in the kitchen. And now he'd lost that connection to the world. He said everything good about me and my brother came from Mom. Our kindness, our intelligence, our success. Listening to him in that moment, I realized how much he undervalued himself. I'd known some of his dreams in life hadn't worked out. He never finished college. He tried to start his own restaurant when I was younger. I remember we'd go to the farmer's market together. He'd put on his chef coat and network with all the vendors and pick his own ingredients and make his own dishes. It was such a proud time in his life. But the restaurant didn't survive, and he had to go back to work for other people. But everyone he'd ever worked with came to Mom's funeral. From 20 years of restaurant jobs. That's how many lives he touched. Because even if he was a little gruff, he was always kind. He was always giving. And even if he wasn't the most emotionally expressive, he was always there. He always showed up for my stuff. And more than that, he took an interest. A few years ago, I decided to study archaeology, and He's become enthralled by it, asking me details and sending me articles. I think he has this idea of himself as a grouchy old man, especially now that he's alone, but that's not how I see him. I mean, not at all. A few weeks after Mom died, he sent me a text saying that he didn't know who he was anymore. And I wrote him back saying, "You're my dad."